Hi guys, and welcome back to another IBRACORP video. Thanks for coming back with us today. It's glad to have you. Today we've got a special guest with us. We've got awesome open source channel joining us for today's video, which will be installing Proxmox as a VM on Unraid. The purpose of today's video is to show you how to install it so that we can see how it looks and see whether you might want to try it bare metal in the future. Also, just to show you a couple of the features that it has built in that may or may not interest you. Obviously, Proxmox is a big virtualization system, so there's not going to be a lot of time to cover everything that it can do. But basically showing you how to get it installed on Unraid so you can have a play yourself, and then worst case scenario, you can just get rid of your VM. So please welcome awesome open source here with me today. I'll let him introduce himself. We're here on his channel as well, so make sure you check it out. He's got a lot of great videos there on open source applications, and he's done a great job covering a lot of them. So, you know, I always love open source stuff. It's a great community to support, so get behind it. You know, if you see an app that you like, it's always good that we've got creators out there showing them off and getting more people in touch with the developers. So I'll let him introduce himself and we'll go from there.
Yeah, I am the open source advocate is how I normally introduce myself. But yeah, my name's Brian. I do the awesome open source channel there on YouTube, and we've done one collaboration before, and I'm super excited that we're doing another one. So I'm super glad you asked me to come on and do this with you. And Proxmox really is, it's a great virtualization system. I've been using it actually for quite a while. I made a video on it, 6-8 months, 10 months back, I don't know, but I've been using it since then, and I actually run a couple of full-time VMs on it, and it does great. It's really been super to be able to have that and just utilize it as part of my virtualization system. So yeah, and I'm excited to do this.
I think I will touch on that. If you guys are interested in more in-depth videos with Proxmox, check out his channel, because like I said, today we're just going to show you how to get it going, but past that point, if you do like it, check out his work. There's definitely some really useful information in those videos to help you pick up a bit more skill with it. Awesome. Well, we're glad to have you with us. It's an absolute pleasure. So guys, today what we're going to do is we've got written documentation on getting this working as well, which we'll always put along with the video. But we're just going to run through it together with the documentation off screen. We'll have a bit of a chat and we'll see how we go. Hopefully by the end you've got a working Proxmox server. So if this sounds interesting to you, stick around. Alright guys, so here we are on the Proxmox website, proxmox.com. It's got a few tidbits of information about what it is and what its purpose is in terms of virtualization and the environment that it works in. So if you didn't know, it does run on Linux. It is a Linux OS, so to speak, and allows us to have virtual machines as well as what they call Linux containers running on it as well. Here on their main website, we've got an explanation on their Proxmox virtual environment. We've also got the backup server and a mail gateway as well. Then I've obviously got all their most common links. So let's go into Proxmox VE real quick. So it tightly integrates the KVM hypervisor, Linux containers, software, storage, and network functionality on a single platform. And that's really good for people like us who have our home NAS. You've got your home server, you might have a beefy system that you want to use only a bare metal OS over the top, and then start building your VMs within that. It also supports things like clustering, so you can cluster multiple VMs together and launch them at the same time, shut them down at the same time, make them as part of one particular task that you're trying to achieve, and have them working in conjunction with each other. So if you view something like ESXi, you can think of this as something similar. So here we are on their features tab, and you can see there's a whole bunch of stuff here that they like to tout, which is great. So you've got your server virtualization, you've got KVMs built in, and container-based virtualization as well. So I think Brian was telling me he may have looked into this Linux container stuff briefly. Is that right?
Yeah, I looked at it. It runs, so this part they use LXC, which is the Linux containerization platform, which just the way that I understand it, so don't be writing angry emails to IBRACORP or me, but it really falls a little bit in between full virtualization, virtual machines, and Docker containers. It's a little bit of a mix where you have actually the OS virtualized to some extent on a minimal way, and then you've got some applications that you're going to virtualize inside of that as well. So it kind of gives you a nice lean running VM, but at the same time you get a little bit more power out of it. And the things that I've heard are something like Nextcloud might run a little bit better in LXC versus in Docker.
Yeah, okay, that's interesting. I definitely haven't used it myself, so I'll be keen to see how that works. Whether it's, how related is it to Docker? Is it completely different? Is it their own sort of thing?
Yeah. I mean, I think Docker actually runs on top of LXC to some extent, but
Right.
Docker, the way I think of it, is really an application virtualization. It does have an OS a lot of times where you're putting like Alpine Linux or maybe a Ubuntu, very extremely minimal Ubuntu Linux in the inside of the container, but really I think of that as an application container. And LXC is again, it does have an OS and you can install things on top of that OS, kind of like a full install, but again, it's very lightweight and very lean the way that it runs. At least that's what I'm gathering so far.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it, actually. Okay, that makes sense to me then. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff here, guys, as well. You know, you've got your management there, you've got your migration tools, command line, you know, role-based admin, authentication. There's a lot to it. It's a beast of a OS, and I think it would take us all day, basically, to go through it all in detail. Here we go again. I've mentioned the clusters, so you can have your clusters. A multi-node enables the creation of highly available virtual servers. So very useful, especially if you're running something in the cloud. It might be best option for you to have something like this laying on the bottom and then building all your VMs on top. You've got bridge networking as well, all your storage options. So you've got storage options there, including ZFS, which I know a lot of people have been interested in lately. So this is something that could help you try that out if that's something you want to give a go with. Then we have our backup restore and our integration settings as well as the Proxmox VE firewall. So that's the basic features there that we've looked into. The first step, if you're going to be following our guide, the first step we're going to do is actually download Proxmox now. So head over to the downloads tab if you're on their website, and we're going to grab version 7 VE here, the ISO installer. You can also get it via BitTorrent if you prefer as well, but we're going to go with version 7. Okay, and we just want the basic Proxmox VE. We don't need the mail gateway or anything like that. Those are separate products that will take more time to go through, and we could look at them in the future if you guys are interested. Once you've got the ISO, just basically put it in our Unraid server into your ISO share, and then it's ready to go so we can get started building our VM. So we're just going to go through to the VMs, guys, and while we're doing this, I'll call out the steps, and yeah, Brian and I will just have a conversation while we do it. So here we are in Unraid on our VM tab. We'll go ahead and click Add VM. When we go to the VMs, go to Add, and then go to Debian. So we'll start with this first, and we'll start filling out all the information we need.
So one thing I noticed is on Unraid, you do have a kind of you said you have an ISO share. On Proxmox itself, you'll actually want to set up a directory for ISOs, and then you'll put those ISOs into Proxmox. And on the version 7, I have version 6 still installed, where you actually have to download the ISO to your local machine and then upload it to your Proxmox machine through the web UI. But on version 7, they've actually made it where you can just link directly to the ISO from Proxmox.
But just, yeah, as a minimum 2 threads. Obviously this is a VM. It depends how much power you want to give it. I don't think it really requires much. Obviously thinking, then again, if you're going to build a VM within this Proxmox, you have to then share those resources forward. So just remember that as you're virtualizing stuff, that, you know, stuff does trickle down from the top. So you'll have to filter it out and pick the resources that you want to pass on later. Similar to our Unraid VM video as well. And we're just going with 2 gig of RAM as a minimum. If we click on ISO here, we can see our Proxmox folder that we created and the ISO that we put in there. For our BIOS, OVMF, we'll leave that as is.
Yeah, on the RAM setting, I mean, if you've got more than 2 gig, it might be worthwhile to do it, only because it's, I've noticed when I run my VMs in Proxmox, you know, if you assign it 6 gigs, it takes 6 gigs. It's not like, hey, I'll get it when I need it. It really kind of looks like it says, hey, I've got 6 gigs, I'm going to use it. You know, basically I'm reserving it for myself in case I need it at any point. So you may wanna,
okay.
If you have it, you might want to give it a little bit more, just, you know, for testing. If you're going to install like a Ubuntu VM on top of Proxmox, it'll, you know, if you're going to give it 2 gigs, it'll reserve that 2 gigs.
Yeah, good point. Good point. So yeah, guys, as Brian was saying there, if you have the RAM, definitely give it to it. I've just bumped it up to 4 gig there, so we'll give it 4 gig, but it's one thing I always recommend you guys do when you're building a server, whether it's Unraid or anything else. RAM is such an underrated thing, because after a few months, maybe even a few weeks, depending what you're doing with your server, you'll find that you're running out of RAM. When I first built my server, I don't know about you, Brian, but when I first built mine, I started with 16 gig. It didn't last very long. Yep. You get, 1-2 VMs, and then you've got all your Docker containers. It's gone.
Yeah. I was actually looking at my machine that I built today to see what the motherboard would actually take, because it said 16 max, but sometimes it says 16 max, but you can fit 32, and make it run. So yeah, I'm already like at the limit of my 16 gigs and kind of thinking, okay, I need to double this or else get a new motherboard. So yeah, it does happen pretty fast. There
you go. Yeah, it just chews it up. Sometimes you're in a position where you're halfway through installing something and you realize you've got no RAM left. So guys, for today's video, as a little added bonus for you guys, I know you're interested in ZFS or ZFS, however you want to say it, depending which part of the world you're in. We're going to be showing you how to set up a ZFS array with RAID Z1. So that gives us a single parity and requires a minimum of 3 drives. So in total, we're going to have 4 drives, 1 for Proxmox, the other 3 for storage. And you can translate that to, if you were doing this bare metal, that's probably how you want to set it up at a minimum as well. So with our VDisk size, the primary VDisk size, we're going to leave it as auto, and we're going to give it 32 gigs, so 3, 2, and a G. For the type, we're going to pick QCal2. For the bus, make sure you pick SATA, and then we'll click the little plus icon here to add another disk as well. So the second, third, and fourth disk, they're going to have the same settings. So with these, we'll give them 100 gig. QCal2 as well, and again SATA. So we'll do that another 2 more times. I'll just expand those out. So Brian, how much space do you have on your Proxmox server?
So I've got a whole myriad of drives, but I've got a 4 terabyte, an 8 terabyte, a 2 terabyte, and a couple of 1 terabyte drives, and then the OS disk is a 256 gig SSD. So.
And do you run?
Everything else is spinning drives though.
So what do you run on there? Like, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, so I run a Ubuntu VM on top of Proxmox, and then inside of that Ubuntu VM, I run a lot of my Docker containers that are actually things that I use around my house pretty regularly. And then I've also got my Home Assistant running inside of Proxmox now. I moved up from the Pi 3B after I got quite a few devices that I manage and run off of it. So it really runs kind of my entire home. And then I've got the Pi. I keep a snapshot and I keep the Pi up to date. Just in case my power goes out, I can run the Pi off of a battery for quite a while to kind of still have the access to the Home Assistant stuff if I need it. So yeah, it just gave it a lot more power to be able to put it into a VM and actually do some extra stuff with it that I wanted to do.
Nice. Sounds like you've...
Yeah, the drive space isn't the problem. It's the RAM the 16 gigs of RAM is really kind of where I'm starting to hit a problem. Because I do run my TrueNAS scale stuff occasionally. I'll boot that up and update it and kind of check it and things like that. I don't run it all the time though, just because I'm kind of testing with it since it's still kind of a beta product. But base goes to my Jellyfin stuff, all my media actually. That's where most of my drive goes on that server.
Yeah. And that's another thing you've covered, TrueNAS scale as well, which is, there've been some great videos. I've really enjoyed watching those. One of the first I've seen as well.
It's been really stable actually, even though it's beta. I just still am not really willing to commit yet to putting it into production, but I think it's eventually going to be my NAS when I'm ready to do it.
Yeah, definitely. I reckon it should be as well. So guys, we've got the template ready. It's all ready to go. You don't have to change any of the other settings. Again, all in the guide. So from here, we'll just go ahead and click create. And here we are. So we're on the main install screen now. And we're going through VNC, which is just launched for us straight off the bat. So we'll start with obviously the top option. We're going to install Proxmox VE.
You know, most of our subscribers are people who want to be admins if they're not already admins, but a lot of people who think, I'm going to try to install this software, they see the Linux load up screen there where it's kind of doing all of its checks and everything like that, the post basically. And it kind of freaks them out because, with Windows, you don't see that. Now with a lot of Linux desktops, you never see that unless you hit certain special, function keys when it first starts up. But when you're doing something like this, where you're getting ready to install something like this, I think that the post screen kind of still freaks people out a little bit until they get back into the UI.
Yeah, and I was just about to say, the first thing I obviously noticed starting this up is we've got a UI that comes up and it just feels a lot more familiar, especially if you're someone coming from Windows. You know, I've been using Windows my whole life, so I'm not a Linux expert by any means. Although I will say, you know, if you guys give it the time and you start learning that stuff, it's really beneficial for you, because you'll find with this sort of environment and these sort of systems, the UI isn't that common, is it, Brian?
No, you do a lot of stuff through the CLI still. I mean, it has a nice web interface, don't misunderstand, but like I still jump into the CLI through SSH a lot of times to do things just because it's faster.
Absolutely, yeah, and it's a skill that's worth having there for those times where you need to jump in. Otherwise, you can just wait to find the answer on, what's the name of that website? What is it? Stack something?
Stack Overflow. Yeah,
Stack
you get
Overflow.
all the best code in the world and all the worst code in the world. All
That's
in one
it,
place
mate.
on Stack
That's
Overflow.
it. The one place where you can ask a question, get the answer, and get yelled at the same time. So it's good.
Exactly. Or you can just come over to the Discord here and get some really good answers from what I was reading.
Yeah, that's it. Join our Discord, guys. We've got a great community here. So here we're on the next screen. So here it's asking us where you want to install Proxmox, which disk. So as you remember, we've passed through a few disks, guys. So here's our 32 gig, and then there's our other 100 gig ones. All right, those are our storage ones. So obviously we're going to go with this one. We don't need to do anything special here. We can click next. Obviously, make sure your time zone is correct. Otherwise, you're going to run into some unforeseen issues down the track. So keep that as...
Now, do they not have Australian English?
No. We don't speak English here. We speak Australian. It's a different language.
We don't really speak English in the US either. We speak American.
Yeah. Come on. Funnily enough, though, if you pick, you know, the United Kingdom keyboard layout, then it's a whole different world. Everything's mixed around, so I've learned that mistake. Yeah. So here we go, guys. We're going to create a password, pretty straightforward. Make sure you pick a password and a valid email address. So I'll put in a password.
You know, it's actually interesting that it picked US English for you by default, because it picked UK English for me when I was setting it up, and I set my time zone to Central US. So
that's just bizarre, yeah. Isn't it?
Yeah.
Alright, so the network interface. So if you're not sure what you're doing, to leave it as it is. If you don't know what you're doing, you can just leave it as it is. You don't have to change it. If you do know what you're doing and you're going to be hosting this, you know, let's say you wanted a fully qualified domain to get to this Proxmox instance or this server, then you could put, you know, proxmox.ibracorp.io, for example, or whatever the case might be. For the purpose of this video, it's a VM. I don't need it to be accessible outside the house. We can just leave it as this pve.local domain. Now the IP address, again, this is where we're going to set a IP address so that it's always the same. I'm actually happy with this IP. It doesn't really matter. It's a VM for me. I can just get rid of it afterwards anyway. But if it's something you're regularly going to get to, put it into an IP that you'll have access to easily. And obviously make sure your gateway and your DNS servers are correct. So this is saying it's going to go through my router to pick up the DNS, which on my router is actually AdGuard, and then followed by Cloudflare's DNS. So, but what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to change that to Cloudflare's DNS, because sometimes you get a few issues when you're going recursively back into another server on the same network, and I don't really want to have any dramas with that. So you can change that if you like, then click next. All right, and let's just put one DNS. We'll do that and click next. Check all the settings over, make sure you're happy with it. If it all looks good, we will automatically reboot after install and click next. So that's a pretty smooth installation process.
Yeah, it really is very straightforward. I mean, compared to a lot of the things that I've seen, you know, the Linux world has gotten a lot better about install wizards and doing things, you know, what I call the easy way.
Yeah.
Which is what I like. I love the easy way. Now, if you feel like just kicking yourself in the backside for, you know, a few hours, then you can always go and get Arch Linux and install it straight up from scratch. You know, it'll the first time around, it'll definitely punish you a little bit, but after you do it a few times, it becomes a little bit more of a old hat kind of thing. Yeah, this is definitely a nice.
I think it's a good move. It's a good move because, like we were saying earlier, there's a lot of people, they're not familiar with command line, so it can be pretty intimidating to at least want to try something. So you want to at least make it easier for people to try it, and then later, you know, hit them with the command line stuff, and then they can decide whether that's for them.
That barrier to entry, right? Because
that's right.
Like you've said on all your videos, most of these open source projects, they keep going off of some sort of plan that you can pay them for, either support or they host it for you, or you know, added features, things like that, right? But you know, if they want people to come use those things and pay them, then they have to definitely reduce that barrier.
Absolutely, yeah. They have to, because yeah, look, I mean, even just looking at this, if you've never done this before, you have no idea what's going on. It's just happening in front of you, so you need time to learn it.
Yeah.
And if it can make it a bit more welcoming for someone to want to learn it, then that's good. So it's just
really, you're done.
Yeah,
You're done with the screen that you're looking at now, actually. Yeah, I mean, other than rebooting, yeah.
so this just rebooted. I accidentally hit the arrow key. It was automatically going to go into this top one anyway, but if it doesn't, yep, that'll start up for you. And I think, if I'm correct, Brian, at this point we don't need the VNC anymore. We should be able to get to it.
No, you don't have to have it. It's gonna, yeah,
there
it's
we
gonna
go.
bring up to the login screen. So if you want to do something in the terminal here, you could, but really setting up SSH and everything is gonna be the right way to go.
Awesome. So
I'm really accessing through the web UI now.
let's give that a try, shall we? Okay, so yeah,
Okay.
good one. Thanks, mate. So yeah, guys, if you run into the same issue I just did, make sure we're putting HTTPS, as Brian has pointed out, because it's trying to come through as an SSL connection.
And are you using Firefox or Chrome here?
I'm using Chrome here.
Okay, so if you're not using Chrome and you're using Firefox, you may also have to put that slash right after the port number at the end. For some reason on Firefox, I have to do that or it will not go.
Okay.
It's just like really particular about that. So just for the Firefox users, in case you went into that.
Nice one. Yeah, thanks, mate. Cheers.
Same
So-
thing for qBittorrent as a matter.
Really?
Yeah, you had mentioned to me once that you had a hard time with Firefox. You had mentioned on your video, I think, where you did the atomic reading
Yes.
stuff.
Yeah.
That you had to switch to Chrome because you couldn't get qBittorrent to load right in Firefox. And I figured out later, like, you have to put a slash after the port number. Once you do the login process, you have to put a slash after the port number and hit enter, and it'll go. It's just,
You know
super
what?
weird.
You're
I don't know
absolutely
why
right.
Firefox doesn't like that.
Yeah, and I don't understand how that works, but someone smarter than me, I'm sure, can tell us in the comments, hopefully.
Right.
We're here on the login screen now, so we've made it. So far, it's been pretty user-friendly, to be honest. Nothing too concerning there. So the username we're going to put is root, and then the password that you configured during the install. Leave everything else the same. We can click save username if you like. Click login. Now we're going to get a warning.
Always going to get this prompt.
Yeah, we're going to get this warning here about the subscription. Proxmox is open source and free, but they like you to purchase a subscription. So, I mean, that's fair enough. They're just trying to make an extra buck. No problems there. They do give you the option to not pay. So we'll show you how to do that. So with a paid subscription, you'll get access to the paid repository for updates, basically, just to explain what it is they're offering as well. We'll change that shortly so we can get to the free repository. But expect more of these reminders, apparently. Is that right, Brian? Do you get these quite often?
Just when you log in. That's the only time I ever see it.
Okay. Fair enough. Oh, that can get pretty annoying, I'm not going to lie, but... So there we go. So here we are. We're in Proxmox. Welcome, everyone. As you can see, there's a lot going on the screen that you may not be familiar with straight off the bat. So what I might do... I'll show people how to get the free subscription, Brian, and then after that, we can, if you can walk me through a couple of things, that would be great. So the first thing it does is starts in the data center view. So it differentiates between your data center and individual servers in the data center. So the first step is select the server that we just installed, which is this one here. As you can see, there's data center, then the server itself. In the server, select repositories and updates. So here's repositories down here. We'll go ahead and click add. That's fine. It's going to tell us again we don't have one. We don't really care. We've just told it why. And we'll go to no subscription. Click add. Then go to the updates tab and click on refresh. So now it's going to check that repository that we've just added so it can grab any updates that are waiting for us there. Will that just die on us?
I get those errors occasionally. You can actually, you can just ignore that. Click close, I think. Give it just a second. There you go. Your stuff. Yeah.
Yeah,
this is all of the updates that it found. So yeah, when you hit that upgrade button, it'll try to push in everything that's there.
Alrighty, so let's do that then. Let's click upgrade. Type in yes, why. Yeah, it's all those little things that that makes it helpful that you're here, because otherwise we'll be stuck for a while, wouldn't we?
Yeah, and it does show you some weird stuff sometimes. It's great. So this may want you to pick. Can't quite read what it says there.
Encoding to use on the console. I'm assuming UTF-8 should be fine.
Yeah, UTF-8. Yeah, it's fine.
And keyboard, that's fine. English US. Because everything revolves around the US, of course.
The US thinks so. I don't know about that. The rest of the world probably doesn't appreciate it much.
I heard a joke the other day, Brian. I don't know if you're gonna like it or not, but
I'm sure I'll love it. Go for it.
One of our guys posted it in our memes channel in the Discord. It was US does use the metric system, but on the flip side, it's because they're using it to measure bullet size.
Ah, that's true. 9mm, 10mm. Yeah, we sure do. Just so you know, when I was a cop, I carried a .40 caliber. So, I think
Old school, mate. Old school.
You know, hey.
It's good. When you ever need to stop the cream, you just blow their head off, mate. You don't even need to.
I'm like, I never had to shoot anybody, you know? I feel so blessed about that, actually.
Yes. No, look, it's a pretty serious topic, but we'll have to learn to laugh about something eventually, hey?
I think most of the gunshots that happened in my city where I started as a police officer were accidental gunshots that either shot the light bar off the roof of the car, or shot a hole in the brand new car door, or shot one of the mirrors off the car, and it was always the cops who did it, trying to look at their cool new guns.
I think that's a people problem, mate. I think anyone would be in that situation.
It is indeed a people problem.
So look, guys, we've done that. It's opened this console. It looks like it's all updated, so we can close this. Thank you very much. And I think
refresh one more time.
Yeah.
Should clear it out.
Yeah, that's fine.
Those little errors each time. I don't know which repository it's not like.
All right. Well, there we go.
Push an update isn't.
No updates remaining. So guys, that's pretty much the setup done. You've got the VM running, you've got the repository there for your updates. Congratulations, you now have a VM running on Unraid with Proxmox. So from this point, I'm just going to ask Brian to maybe show us a couple of things, point out a couple of features that might be of interest. This is completely new to me, so it's nice to get a little bit of his wisdom on this. So go ahead, Brian, give us a call out, show us something that we might want to check out here.
Yeah, so one of the things I like about Proxmox is that really, so as you said, the data center level, you have kind of a summary screen there that gives you a little bit of an overview of what's going on with your system, but then also at the PVE level there, so for each server that you're running, you get, there's a summary option there in that list, second one from the top. It just shows you how things are running on that particular server. So as you add disks and you add other things, and you start running VMs and so on.
Very nice.
You know, of course, these things change over time, so you can get a pretty nice, pretty quick overview of what's going on with your server. That
I really like that. Yeah.
Gives you some pretty good details. Yeah. So you can see it from this level, from the data center level, and then as you get into your VMs, each of your VMs gets a summary screen as well that kind of gives you ideas of how those VMs are running and what's going on with them. So if you're noticing high usage at this level, you're like, okay, what's using up all my resources? I know I didn't allocate that much. You can go down and start looking through each VM and kind of figure out which one's causing a problem and deal with that, you know, on an individual basis, which makes it pretty nice.
So could you maybe show us that, Brian? How do let's say I want to get a VM going. What's the best way to go about it?
So, I mean, step one is really setting up your disks. So you have your disks set up from where you created the VM, but down the list ways, a little bit past halfway is a section that says disks there.
Yep.
Right there, disks, yeah.
Yep.
So you're gonna see your disks here, and actually with your different disks, if they're already set, let's see, it should say what you've got set here. It looks like it's got QEMU hard disks set. And you need to kind of look and see by the size which one is your OS disk, but it doesn't always put them in the right order.
Yeah, okay.
Looks like you've got
So it should be these three here, right?
Three, yeah. So you've got those three, and I think if you let's see, there's some option buttons at the top. That's not the right click. Sorry.
I've got create VM here.
There's initialize disk with GPT.
Right, just
so
up
you
here.
kind of have that option, yeah. So you're going to kind of clean the disks up. It says that it's already parted, but yeah. So you're going to kind of go through and set up your disks real quick. And you have LVM, ZFS, and different options. So on that disks tab, you're going to basically set those up the way that you want, and then they'll show up in that list of ZFS-based disks or LVM disks and things like that.
So if we wanted to create ZFS, would we just do it under here?
Yeah, so you can go create ZFS, and then you see your 3 disks there. Make sure it's the ones that you want, and you check each one.
Right. So we've got our 300 gig ones there.
Yeah, and then you want to give that a name, of course, and then pick the RAID Z. I think it's just RAID Z.
RAID Z. Oh, that's... See, now, just so you're aware, Brian, a lot of our community members that use Unraid have been waiting for this feature for a while from Unraid, which, you know, they are looking at doing, which is great, or at least getting feedback from the community about. I think something like this just makes it so much easier, doesn't it? I mean, you can just...
It does, yeah. I mean, it gives you that option
right there.
to kind of jump in now and learn a little bit about it for sure. Now on Unraid, what is it used by default today?
So right now, so you've got the XFS and you've got
yeah.
BTRFS, I believe.
ButterFS, yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Obviously, I've gone for XFS for this build, so...
Yeah, definitely depending on what you're doing, ZFS can be a definite useful thing. If you have ZFS running on like SSDs though, ZFS is rough because ZFS does lots of writing and reading constantly because it's checking all of the stuff that's there to make sure everything's good, you know, and if it sees something wrong, it'll try to fix that problem, you know, for you. So there's a lot of automatic stuff built into ZFS, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
But also it's pretty rough on disk. So if you have spinning disks, ZFS does great with spinning disks, but with SSDs so far, I know that ZFS has definitely been like kind of you want to be cautious because it can definitely eat up your SSDs, you know.
That's good to know. I didn't know that actually. We'll see how we go. We'll click create. Oh, okay. We've got a space. We've got a space in the name.
Oh yeah, no spaces. Sorry.
That's all right, Brian. Don't do it again.
There you go.
ZFS array. So here we go. We've got the array. Simple as that. Bang. Away we go. We've got a whole array there of ZFS. How good is that? That's impressive.
Now you need to set up also a directory. So there should be an option right there. Yeah, directory.
In here.
Hopefully you can use some of those ZFS space for your directory. Find out if you needed an extra disk. I led you down the wrong path here. I might have. There you go.
So
it's not going to give you a drive to use. So we need a space to actually put our ISOs.
All right, guys. I'm just cutting to this point. So we had a bit of an issue that I need you to be aware of. So if you are going to try the ZFS array as a VM here on Unraid like we are, you might come into an issue that we've just experienced, which was it couldn't import the array. And a bit of searching around reveals that because it's on a cache that is SSD, which I'm sure most of you do have that set up as well for your virtual machines to put the V disks on your cache. Apparently the cache SSDs can be too fast, and so is it booting too fast? Is that right, Brian?
Yeah, it looks like it gets through the boot process so fast that it actually gets the ZFS pool imported, and so it creates an issue whenever you're booting, which stops the web server from booting up and everything like that. So the suggestion was to increase your boot time by fixing that in Grub, and then just update Grub basically to the boot time. And so if you hit that error, you can update your Grub with increasing the boot time, and then reboot again and see if it comes up.
Yeah,
that's their suggestion.
So we suggest trying that. As we're recording a video here, we don't have all the time to do that, so we've just decided to reinstall the VM. That's the beauty of it. It didn't take us very long to do that. So we're back where we started. We're not going to do the ZFS array this time, but I will still have a look at some of the other options that Brian will show us. So let me just wait for this to finish.
All right, so let's create our directory. You should be able to do this now. So you do need a directory space if you want to put ISOs onto Proxmox.
Okay, so you would call this something like ISOs, or?
I just call it ISOs, yeah.
So is this, just in terms of how you would use this, would you have the directory as the top level direct. So is this all you would use this directory for? Just ISOs?
Yes. Well, I mean, you can upload anything to it technically, but this is what I use it for.
Yeah, I just mean in terms of like a folder structure or directory structure, will you create a directory for, you know, other things separately? Like, what's the benefit of having it this way?
I mean, I haven't really done anything with it except to use it for this, but yes, you can definitely create directories for other things and then allocate those things to different VMs as I recall, but I do a lot of that.
So this would be like shares
really through the
in Unraid
tab, I guess, yeah, it'd be kind of like shares in it.
Alright, that makes sense.
So now you should have, if you go, let's see, you created the directory, right?
Yep.
So if you do, let's just do refresh real quick. That's good. So on PVE, it should give you the option to get to that directory. It should have an expansion over there now, so you can get to the directory.
Whereabouts would that be?
I don't know how to say that. There, just refreshed. There you go. So if you look to the left, into the left column.
Ah, yes. Okay, yep.
There you go.
Yeah, so I just pressed F5 on the keyboard, so...
Okay, yeah, I just had to refresh the browser. So here now, if you go down, you see ISO images. So you can see the different things that you can put.
Okay.
What you use this for, yeah. So this would be ISO images. Now that's the new feature. You can download directly from a URL, which is pretty awesome.
Now that's cool.
So if you have a URL for an ISO you want to get, you just put it in there. It'll pull it straight into Proxmox instead of doing the old way, which was download the ISO to your local machine and then use the Proxmox UI to upload it to that machine over the LAN, which still wasn't long, but it was just multiple steps.
That's pretty cool actually. What if I just put in that? Does that bring up anything? There you go. So I've just put in the Proxmox download URL. Click download. Yeah, that's nice, man.
Yeah, it's a pretty nice feature and something that people have been asking for, I think, for a while. So, do you have an ISO you want to add? Maybe you could upload one. It might be quick.
Oh yeah, I can do it that way. Yeah, great. That's also a nice way to do it too, to be honest. All right, so we've got an ISO there for us now. What do you reckon would be the next step for someone?
So up in the upper right, you've got several buttons there. So you've got Create VM, and then you've got the Create CT, which is actually the LXC type container. So when you get more familiar with those, you could do that. But right there, you just click on the VM button. So here it kind of walks you through a little wizard. So PVE is where you want to put this. Now, if you had multiple nodes in your cluster, then you would see more of those in that list, of course. But yeah, once you've kind of picked what you want, give it, a little bit of so that ID number does have to be a unique number, by the way. It'll always kind of auto number, but whether you're using it for VMs or containers, that number cannot be the same. So it always has to be a unique number.
Okay, so this one here.
Yes.
Yeah. And
then give it a name that you want. There's not always stuff there. Yeah, there's really nothing to do there.
Okay.
You can just click on next or click on the next thing in the list up there, whichever way you want to do it.
Yep. We've got our ISO image there too, which is great.
Yeah, so you're going to click on that. And of course, if you had more, it would have more in the list for you to pick from. And then it'll try to auto-select what's the right thing, and that's the right thing because Ubuntu is definitely after the 2.6 kernel, so that's what you want to leave it as. And you do want it to be that way. Now, if you had a physical CD or DVD, you could choose that from those radio buttons. But, since we're doing it this way, yeah, it's much faster.
All right. And I've noticed this advanced tab here too. Do you recommend that, or do you think that might throw people?
I have never had to check the advanced tab, but you're welcome to check it and kind of see what's under it. It's only on a few of the tabs there, but yeah, it's nothing that I ever mess with. But definitely, if you're more of a professional with VMs, it might be useful to you. So on this one, I don't really change anything. I just leave it the way it is because it generally picks good defaults. The next step for the hard disk is going to be where you want to pick where do you want this thing stored. So this is kind of where you start saying, okay, this is the disk I want to save it to. Things like that.
So there's a lot of settings. Sorry.
Yeah, lots of just little settings, setting up the VM. Sorry.
Yeah, a lot of settings here with the disk, especially, which I think I might just uncheck advanced just so we can keep it straightforward.
Yeah, on the storage part, you might want to click on that storage part where it says ISOs. You don't want to put this on the ISOs directory. You probably pick a disk if you have that option. I think you have a 15 gig disk. Is that your main drive? You don't want to use that either.
Yeah.
So we didn't set up your storage for this. That's the reason. We should have set up one of your other disks to also have an LVM volume.
Well, let's do that real quick. So if we come back to
sorry,
this,
I didn't think of that.
No, that's all right. So we're back here. We've got the directory done. We're not going to use ZFS because we need a minimum of 3 disks, which we have realized we don't have for what we want to do. So we'll go with LVM. So would you then create a volume group?
Yep.
Group. Okay. We'll call this.
You can just give it a name. I mean, any name that you like, as long as you can tell what it is. You know, you might call it VMs or whatever. If you're going to put all your VMs on one, you know, that kind of.
Good point. Yeah.
Kind of
Good point. Add storage. All that VMs. Keep it nice and easy.
Yeah.
So if we then come back to ISOs again. Oh, we don't need to be there, do we?
Create VM is almost always up there at the top.
All right. So. We'll sit on the summary here. We'll go create VM. That's our node that we're using. Don't need to pick this. We'll call this Ubuntu. Click next. There's our ISO. Next again. We're going to leave all that as default. And leave all this.
This is what you want to pick from the thing that says storage. You want to try to pick your other storage.
Here we go. Yep.
Yeah.
Excellent. So, yeah. Pick the disk that we've just created there.
And then allocate how much space you want on it there. You have 32 gig by default, but you can always change that to whatever you want. So, because it'll hold the operating system and whatever you intend to add to it.
Let's say 50 gig. Now, this is essentially what we've just picked here. This would be an actual disk, right? If this is on a bare metal system.
Yeah, that's kind of like your root volume. I think you don't really want to pick that. Yeah, I mean, if it's a bare metal system, this would be an actual disk or a disk array, depending on what you set up, right? But in this case, LVM, it's going to be a disk. Yeah.
All right. So we'll click next, and now this is obviously allocating our CPU. Now, I've allocated 6 to the Proxmox VM, so I probably wouldn't recommend more than 2 then. Or actually, we'll go 4. Go 4 sockets. I only have 1 socket. Click next. And memory, I don't think Ubuntu needs much, does it? Probably get away.
It doesn't, no. 2 gigs ought to be.
Yeah. And no network device. So with this...
So the network, I just leave the defaults generally. If you know more about the networking that you have set up in your Proxmox server and your network in and of itself, the hardware and everything like that, then you can definitely mess with it. But usually it picks the right thing because it picks the bridge network that'll give you an actual IP address on your main network LAN. But if you need to do something special for it, like set it up on a special VLAN or something like that, then you'd want know a little bit more about what settings you want to have first. So definitely kind of keep that in mind. Now you can also, one thing is a lot of people have been virtualizing in Proxmox or other places like pfSense for your firewall or OpenSense for your firewall. In which case you want to have that kind of right behind your modem coming in and use it for your routing a lot of times. So you'd want to set this up so that it can actually have the proper NIC and it's not going to be bridged, and there's going to be some other stuff that you do with it and set up some extra NICs. So just depending on what you're setting the VM up for, the network tab could be important, but most of the time you're just looking for a bridge network. You're setting up something like an OS with you.
Okay, that's really good to know. Because I was actually looking at the networking earlier, and I found there was a few options that you could pick with Proxmox and how you want to use that networking, which is really good.
Then it gives you the summary there just to make sure everything looks good. Now you can check that box if you want it to start as soon as it creates the VM, or you can leave it unchecked. It'll create the VM. You'll see it show up over in the left panel, and then you can start it from there.
Hold on,
so kind of a couple of options there.
Let's try that. So we've just created that.
Yeah, and if you look at the bottom, you kind of get a summary log of what you're doing. So you can see VM 100, and over on the right it says OK. So if you ever see like down there below, you see the error where you kind of did the updates and stuff. So
yeah,
you can kind of see what's going on. And then over there on the left, you should see the Ubuntu VM now. And it should. Did you check it or uncheck it? I'm sorry.
I didn't check it yet. No.
Okay, yeah. So over on the right, you see that start button. You can click on that if you want to start it up. And then back towards the left, they have things all over the place, but back towards the left, you should have console. And it'll bring you up and kind of show you, and there's the Ubuntu console.
Hey,
and over on the left
very nice.
edge, there's like a little thing where you can full screen it and all that kind of stuff. Just the left edge of the console, there's that little weird arrow thing.
Ah, right, yeah, VNC controls.
Yeah, so you got VNC controls there. So yeah, it'll just kind of start doing its thing. And again, you'll see the post, right? You know, so this is depending on if this is Ubuntu server or Ubuntu desktop, will depend on what it shows you to.
And you've got your snapshots option, which is awesome. That's great.
Yeah, you can do snapshots from it. You can schedule snapshots and things like that as well, and you know, choose where you want them to go, of course. So,
oh man, that's nice. That's a very clean way of going about it.
Yeah, you're setting up your VM now. I mean, if you've ever done any install,
yeah,
you're doing it right. So I mean, this is the same process you see with anything. Knowing to set up the directory, I think, and then knowing to set up your disks for where you want to put your VMs and any kind of storage you want to have and stuff like that is probably the most important thing. So if you're going to set up like a system like I have with Ubuntu, and then I run Docker on it, and I have Jellyfin, so I use a separate disk for all of my media storage for Jellyfin, so then you can attach that. So if you click on you've got Ubuntu there, and then there should be a hardware option there on that second column.
Yep.
So you can see the options that you have there, but you can also see there's an add button at the top. Right there to the left, yeah. So when you click that,
yeah.
you can see you can add disks and USB devices and all kinds of things, you know, pass through from the physical machine or things like that. Now, when you're doing it on top of Unraid, getting USB to go through Unraid to go through Proxmox, I don't know how well that would work, but you know, if anybody tries it, let us know.
If you guys
from physical, it works great. So
yeah, if you guys watched the Unraid VM video, we showed you how to pass through USB in order to make that work. But again, as a VM, look guys, it's really for you to test, see if either you like it, see what functions it has, and then you can decide whether you want to put it onto a separate system, bare metal. You know, well, I'm obviously going to recommend it bare metal because that's how it's designed. It's not meant to be a VM with more VMs on top of it, but it doesn't stop you doing it if that's what you want to do.
I'll give you 2 more tips that I've learned just, you know, through pain.
Please.
And the slightest pain. So if you look there, you have a CD drive that still shows your ISO.
Yep.
So you're going through the install, so you want that there. But once the install is finished, you might want to, once you reboot and you're back in your OS, you might want to go up here and check and make sure that that's not there. And if it is, just basically remove it.
Yeah.
Because what will happen is if you get the boot order wrong, it'll try to boot from that ISO instead, or if your disk isn't attached, if you're using a USB disk or something, if it's not attached, it'll try to start from that ISO and it won't work because it's expecting the full operating system at that point.
Right. Yep.
And then there is a boot order option, I think, over there on that second column as well, so that if you have multiple disks, you can tell it this is the one that it should boot. Don't try to do these others, or if you wanted to put in like a physical disk and have it boot from that, or an ISO, or you know, mount an ISO and have it boot from that, you can. But yeah, there's quite a bit of stuff there, but definitely if it keeps that ISO there after you've done the full install, you might want to go get rid of it so you don't have issues when you reboot the system and stuff.
That's really nice. I like how you can do that within here as well, though, setting the boot order.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, it's great. And then the only other thing is you do have the option to set it to restart automatically if you reboot the host OS. So if you reboot Proxmox, when it comes back up, it'll reboot certain virtual machines that you definitely want to have up and running. So you might have 30 virtual machines, but you only have 3 that you want to start on boot. So you can go set which ones those are in there just to save you some headache.
Yeah, excellent. Just a startup, auto startup for us, which is important when you're hosting stuff that needs to be up all the time, like a business website or anything like that. That's fantastic, Brian. Thank you very much for showing us that. I know there's so much more of this system that we haven't even had a chance to really go into. It seems like a very, very powerful product. So I'm hoping people give it a try, and yeah, I think people should really try it out and just give it a go, and at least have a play, break it a few times like we did, start again, have a read of the docs, and of course check out Brian's videos on the Awesome Open Source channel, because like I said, he's covered a few of these videos as well about this topic. So that's probably the next place I'm going to be heading after this video, so I can actually start figuring out what to do from this point on. But if you're looking at getting it on Unraid and getting it into a VM and just giving it a play, then I hope today's video with us collaborating has helped you do that. Is there anything you'd like to say before we head out for today, Brian?
No, man, I just appreciate this. This was so great. You know, you helped me out a while back and did a collab with me to show me some really cool stuff. And since then, I've been actually using that system with the atomic and stuff like that, just constantly. So it's been tremendous. So I appreciate that, and getting to do this again with you has been great.
Absolutely.
We're both busy lives, so I love getting to get on with you and do this. And you know, my dad, you know, the technology blows him away that I tell him, hey, I'm gonna get on with somebody in Australia and we're gonna do a video here in a minute, Dad. He just can't understand, like, how is this possible?
Yeah, it takes some coordination, but you know, it really pays off because I like working with you, man, and I like working with anyone else that has the same ideals that we do, so it just makes it a bit more fun to have them mess around.
Absolutely.
And we're all for world peace, so if we can all get along, guys, that'd be great. But this is a first step in the right direction, so thanks very much, Brian, for being with us today. I really appreciate it. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and we'll see you in the next IBRACORP video.